Hi, I'm Jason Gore for ThatShelf.com. We're here to look at the Vancouver International Film Festival screening of Father, Mother, Sister, Brother, the award-winning film by director Jim Jarmusch.
Thanks, Jeff.
So, Jim Jarmusch, one of my all-time favorite directors, somebody who has gifted me with movies that I hold incredibly dear to my heart. Films like Dead Man, films like Ghost Dog, these incredible, cerebral, yet goofy, yet musical, deeply musical films. Not just in the way that he actually engages with his scores, but the way that he sort of plays casting, sort of like the way that a band director would, taking these different notes from these different elements and sort of bringing us something new and special. When I saw Down by Law a million years ago, it was so revelatory. The casting of that is amazing. Robert Benigni, Tom Waits, and John Lurie. Tom Waits again shows up here. He plays the titular father with Amiam Malek and Adam Driver in the first of three chapters. It's sort of told in these three sections. The father's story is that. The mother story is, I got to get it right because my brain is so shut after the festival. It's Charlotte Rampling, Victor Krebs, and Kate Blanchett, of course. And then the third one, the sort of two brother sister, is told another story. One takes place in Ireland, one takes place in France, and one takes place, I guess, in New Jersey. And this film won Venice. It is the top prize winner at Venice, and Jim Jarmusch is now the winner of Venice. And I love that. This isn't the film I would necessarily give that to. It's one of those things that I think if you would have seen it outside of that sort of crazy environment, even a festival environment, you would enjoy this film as this little sort of chapter. I think if anything, it's sort of an honorary sequel to something like Coffee and Cigarettes. Something that's again anthological, something that sort of dances very, softly around sort of shared elements, chapter to chapter. Doesn't necessarily go as deep as one might like into some of these characters' lives, but sort of sets up situations and lets them sort of be goofy and sees how these different environments sort of echo in interesting ways. Because it's episodic, there are inevitable comparisons. Like, do you like the first one better than the second one? The second one better than the third one? And it was interesting because at this particular screening, I know so many people who despised the brother-sister one. They just felt the dynamic super weird. Their sort of relationship almost odd, bordering on the creepy. I get it. I'm not entirely sure it sort of worked the way that he was going, but it is an interesting sort of wander through Paris. The middle one, the sort of very staid conversation between mother and daughters over tea with these top-down shots of them eating is very fun. And the Tom Waits one, to begin with, again, lots of awkward silences, lots of like people sitting around wanting to communicate and refusing to communicate, which may or may not work for you. It is certainly a Jarmuschian sort of sense of sort of whimsy, playfulness, but also sort of like a weird, depressing sort of element. It telegraphs some of its sort of plot points pretty easily, so you're kind of sitting around waiting for things to actually transpire that you know are inevitably going to transpire, especially in the first chapter. It's not like there's any grand surprises there about what's playing out, but it is kind of fun how it actually plays out. The film has a lot of people waiting around for other people to talk. And that sense of tedium is, I think, an artistic choice, but it isn't necessarily one that actually benefits this kind of storyline. And one thing that I do have to critique, I mean, it's ridiculous. This obviously could be sort of a very stagey sort of 1950 style film where you'd have people having long conversations in cars while there's sort of projection screens in the background showing as if they're driving and they're not really driving, that sort of thing. In today's day and age, doing that sort of thing is very simple. You put a car on a green screen and kind of shoot that. But this is shot so poorly. It is embarrassing how poorly some of these process shots are done. Namely, that you have the background that's completely in focus, and then the lens choice on the front is actually such that the sort of pillars that are behind the people's heads are actually blurry. So you have like in focus and then blurry, and then everything is crystal clear outside the car, and it's jarring. You just know that there's an artificiality to all of these shots, which, if it's on purpose, is just like, just have space shots outside. I mean, to give the sense of realism, given how many shots we have of clearly second unit, of clearly not our own actors. They don't even look anything like them. Their body heights are totally different. Driving through the actual locations, it's just inexcusably amateur. I understand the need to actually save some money on not having these actors actually driving through the streets of Paris. But at the very least you could do is actually make sure that visually it works out. For the third chapter, the lead actor, who has a bunch of dreads, all his dreads are like just these fuzzy snakes because of all the errant hairs sort of coming off of them are just cloned out on the green screen. It's a technical thing that I think, given somebody with the esteem and the sort of prowess of Jim Jarmusch, it's just unbelievable. And the fact that something like that, something technical, is taking me out of the film, I grant most people won't even notice or even care if it's pointed out to them. But I just found that so distracting. I mean, it's like having bad sound as being something I'm guilty of shooting on the bloody camera. But I'm not presenting this film as a Venice award-winning film. So that is one thing that just felt really chintzy. And it really took me out of those sequences that are meant to be sort of, you're meant to linger. You're not seeing much. This is a two-shot, these two people talking. It's not like you're staring into the eyes of them or they're saying anything particularly profound. They're having these banal conversations. Your eyes sort of looking towards the directions that are doing. Literally, the cars are going around corners and like the steering wheel's not moving. That's, I guess, sort of excusable. But the fact that you have these multi-planes of focus, I just think is just ridiculous. Let me be the one to actually complain about that. So once again, I could not be happier that Jarmusch took home the trophy. I think this is a ridiculous film for him to have taken home for. I would love to have championed many other films that sort of got underappreciated, but nonetheless, I'm not going to begrudge any of that stuff. I would have loved to have seen slight more attention to the sort of technical aspects, but I will also celebrate the fact that this guy is continuing to make films in this day and age, uncompromising, absolutely directorial vision, and giving people stories that he likes to tell. And I will continue to watch them, enjoy. I just think some of these little things could have been done a little bit better. Things could have been tightened up. The storylines could have been slightly more engaged when they needed to be, and allow some of the whimsy to come to the fore a little bit more often than it does, because otherwise it turns out a little bit dour. There we go. There's our look at the Venice Award winner that played this year's Vancouver International Film Festival, Father, Mother, Sister, Brother. For ThatShelf.com, I'm Jason Gorber. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe, ring the bell, follow us on social media, do all that stuff. We'll see you next video. All the best. Take care.